the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
There is an exaggerated fear of the instability of early marriage, which gets transmitted to kids from their parents, to young adults from their parents. And you're too young to get married. And that has the actual basis of this is studies which do show that if you're 18 or 19 and you get married, that your odds are worse. But they're not really significantly worse if you're 22 or 23, and people have overlearned that lesson. I've been going to church for about 2 decades now on a consistent basis, and I don't think I've ever heard a sermon or homily where the priest said, maybe you should think about marrying your boyfriend or girlfriend, the other parent of your child, and that would be nice to have as well.
It's the Drew Mariani Show on Relevant Radio.
That was National Review's Ramesh Panuru on getting married younger. I've been following this story for a little while, and I've been asking the question. I mean, I have nieces and nephews. I have friends. I have a lot of people whose kids, and it doesn't matter whether you come from a great Catholic family or you don't. It just seems that so many young adults are putting off marriage. So I scratch my head. Is it debt? A lot of people say, oh, I got to do my bucket list. You know, I want to travel. I want to hit these many countries before I get married. Maybe it's fear of getting it wrong. Maybe they come from divorced families. Maybe they think, oh, my gosh, I can't settle down too soon. I'm not ready for kids. I'm going to lose my freedom. What's really behind the delay in marriage? What are we missing? What's going on culturally? What does it portend for the future? What I found is that marriage is not even on the radar of a lot of adults anymore. It's not even on the radar. And maybe you're 20-something. You're saying, yeah, Drew, I'm there. We're going to wait. I'm not interested. The average age for marriage in the U.S. is now over 30 for men. It just seems to be getting older and older. It's 28 for women, but 30 for men, a full 7 years later than it was just a generation ago. And in some cities, believe it or not, it's even higher than that. It's kind of the average. In places like New York and L.A., people are not getting married until their late 30s. And you probably have seen this. A lot of people just aren't getting married at all, right? They're just not going to do it. Why is that? Let's talk about it today. I'm delighted to have with me a very gifted sociologist. He's an emeritus professor of sociology at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. He's a senior research associate at the Ruth Institute and a regular contributor here. I always tap into his expertise and his genius. You can find Father Paul Sullins at ruthinstitute.org. Padre, welcome back. Good to talk with you today.
Hello, Drew. It's a great joy to be with you. Yeah, I'm a senior research associate. I'm getting more senior by the day.
Every day.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But you've hit many of the points of the real struggles that face our young people today with regard to marriage. I would say probably the strongest factor is that we do not, as a culture, hold up an ideal of getting married for them. If you go back a century, they would get messages from their family and from their neighborhood and also in school. There would be like a training in how to get married and how to function in a marriage relationship and how to have all of those skills that go into marriage. So they grow up with marriage not on the radar, as you mentioned. And I think that's probably at the root of much of this. But there's lots of other things. It's very difficult for young people today, first of all, to meet somebody that's marriageable. We have a lot of social disintegration. We talk about that in, political discourse and people being on two different sides incompatibly. But everybody in our society lives in their own little silo and communicates with people like themselves on social media or in other ways. How do you meet somebody? Yeah. It's really hard to do that. You can't go to the grocery store or can't go to your normal rounds of life. So a lot of people today, I think it's a good trend, are using remote communication and apps and dating features to find someone like themselves. And that often works out very satisfactorily. But it's a problem. We don't have dating, getting to know one another in a way that you're looking toward marriage. A lot of the dating relationships, even among very faithful, moral young people, is focused on other things that aren't necessarily oriented toward marriage. So I also see kind of a movement toward doing more intentional dating among young people, and even some schools, some colleges have started courses in dating and how to have a date that's going to advance kind of your goals into that.
That's pretty wild. As a sociologist, I want to get to some numbers with you, and I'm just curious, the generation before my parents, they probably got married very young, right? Yep. And then my generation probably got married in their early 20s, I would think, maybe mid-20s, something like that. And then this generation is getting married, not just late 20s, but now early 30s. Right. Is this trend continuing to move in a direction of later marriage? When that happens, that means less children. Childbearing years get limited. The window shrinks there. But what does it, one, portend for the future? Where's the trend leading? And what's exacerbating that? What is fomenting the move in this direction, in your opinion?
Yeah, there's almost a straight line increase since the 1960s in the age at marriage, going up. And I think it's probably continuing today. There's going to be a hard stop at some point, because if you get married past a certain age, you can't fulfill some of the functions of marriage. But we're into our early 30s. Women tend to get married a little bit younger than men, but it's going up. What's causing it? Well, one thing is, you mentioned this, what we call sociologically extended adolescence. When I was young, right, way long time ago, back in the 60s, you thought, well, gee, if somebody by age 25 wasn't married, hadn't gotten into a steady job, maybe had bought a house, those are the tasks of adulthood. And they don't happen by age 25 today. They happen later and later into the 30s. So there's that going on. There's also the so-called sexual revolution that allows young people to have marriage-like relationships without buying into the whole package of marriage. So they can cohabit and have companionship without going into the whole package. They can even have children outside of marriage. They can buy a house, which used to be kind of part of being in marriage. So there's that going on as well. Marriage itself has been what we would call deracinated. It has been undermined by, first of all, divorce that makes marriage not necessarily lifelong and permanent. And then you have blended families. And then you have same-sex marriage and marriage-like relationships on that score. And so what we would think of as marriage as this high noble ideal that that has these qualities of being lifelong and fulfilling lots of goals like that. Young people today, not so much.
Yeah, it's interesting. Back in 1949, 80% of households were headed by a married couple. Last year, that number was down from 80% to 47%. Fewer than half of all households are headed by married couples. I remember there's an old saying that's out there that says, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free, right? And we see cohabitation rates up right now, premarital sex. And people are saying, why marry, right? Why marry? That's the mindset of our day. Let's take a few calls for you. Coral Springs, Florida. Rachel is actually one of those late 20-year-olds. Good afternoon, Rachel. Good to have you with us.
Hi, Drew. Yes. So I'm so glad I turned on the radio at just the right moment for this topic. So just a little context. So me personally, I am one of those late 20-year-olds. I am somebody who my entire life, I think one of the greatest things is to be a wife and a mom. Unfortunately, I've not met the right person yet. And it's kind of funny. So I'm not on social media. As of literally yesterday, I switched to Charity Mobile and a flip phone, no less. So definitely trying to be more present, within my life. But I was somebody who kind of in my late teens, early 20s, I was away from the faith. I dated kind of in a very secular fashion, just to leave it at that. But then coming very deep into my faith in the past 6 years, I feel like I'm personally very turned off from the dating apps and things like that, just from my experience doing it the wrong way in the secular world type way. But I've also found just with the people within my area or within my community, it just feels like there's not many men that have that capacity to lead or have that courage to initiate anything. And I know I'm a little strong-willed as a person, but I'm very humbled to, I want somebody who has the courage to lead and has that as part of their personality. So I'd love just any advice you might have in that regard.
good for you for holding out for a man who's going to be a good leader, for having those ideals, and for holding on to them and not surrendering them. I think you should match that with an active search for such men. And you're not going to run across them in the ordinary course of life. You're certainly not going to find them in a bar. You are not going to normally find them in most churches because you're not going to run across that many young men. I would recommend you don't have to be on social media. You can use a desktop computer or a laptop and go on, and there's lots of places that would help you to connect with young men who have leadership skills but can't find women that are going to appreciate that. You'd be surprised how many men like that would be within a reasonable distance for you to connect with and to get to know. And I think you ought to set that as one of your tasks.
Well, let me do this too for you, Rachel. I mean, maybe there's a Catholic business group or there's a different social circle that you can somehow get into, which would be a good idea. But I'd also invite others who are 20-something or early 30s who held out for that good male leader and figure that you wanted in your life. You wanted somebody who could spiritual lead, that had a depth to them, a maturity, a faith. And that's important, Rachel. I mean, I wouldn't compromise on that. And he's out there. I can't tell you how many people that I work with, even here at the network, both male and female, that are single, that are always looking for somebody that is, virtuous and has those ideals. Rachel, I'm assuming you're praying too, right? You're asking God to bring that person into your life?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I've kind of gone in waves of it because I think I try not to focus on it so much and just be present to, the people in my life and just be open to the work the Lord's doing. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because I do actually work for a Catholic organization. There you go. But very similarly, 99% are young, married with a lot of children, which is so beautiful and it's so affirming. But that's where I've tried to be more open to, people who know me well setting me up, but unfortunately have also had some not so great experiences there as well.
I think what you said was perfect. And this is how I am. When you're looking, for some reason, it never happens. You're going here, you're going there, you're trying to find Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, and it just never happens. I think, say, Lord, it's in your hands. Live your life, and you'll be surprised at how your spouse comes into your existence, sort of cross your path, I think, in the most unexpected way. And maybe that's because when you're not really caring or not really looking, maybe there's a different vibe you're putting off. I don't know. That makes you, a little more attractive. Or maybe the Holy Spirit just got to trust it's going to do its job. You can join me and listen on the Relevant Radio app to The Drew Mariani Show live each weekday at 2 to 5 Central. Thanks for listening.